First up, we're in Chardon, Ohio, for the sentencing of 18-year-old TJ Lane. A year earlier, Lane showed up at Chardon High School armed with a handgun, went on a shooting spree, killing 3 students and injuring 3 others. Lane offered no motive for the killings and pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and felonious assault. Now in the courtroom, Lane's day for judgment has finally come. But he isn't done tormenting all the people whose lives he's already destroyed. Watch as he slowly reveals a sinister message to all those in the courtroom. The handmade t-shirt emblazoned with the word killer. It's a perverse reminder of a similar shirt he wore the day of the school shootings. With shock still radiating through the courtroom, the victims' family members share their emotional impact statements.
I will miss Demetrius. That child stole my baby's life, and he should never be able to do this to anyone ever again.
But Lane coldly smirks as he listens to the grieving family members.
You murdered my son, Danny. You are a killer. You're a pathetic excuse for a human being. In fact, you're not even a human being. You don't deserve to be called human. You're a monster.
And finally, when he's given a chance to speak, the so-called monster carries on with his torture of the victims' families.
Same pulled the trigger to kill your son. Now all of you.
Lane's defiant attitude seemingly continues even as the judge hits him with a sentence that assures he'll never walk the streets again. 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The nightmare that is TJ Lane would disappear into the Ohio Department of Corrections. It has a special unit for inmates that are likely to be targets of violence. Until a year and a half later, when he makes an escape. After a 6-hour manhunt, he's apprehended and later transferred to a maximum security facility. Already serving 3 life sentences, authorities choose not to charge Lane for the escape. Now to Broward County Circuit Court in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where Judge Stephen Zachor is holding bond hearings via closed-circuit TV. This is Julio Torres, who doesn't seem too excited about the proceedings. 24-year-old Torres may look tired because he was arrested late the night before. He's charged with resisting arrest, trespassing, and violating his probation.
Your bond on count 1 is $100. There's no additional charge for count 2. You'll be held no bond on the Dade County violation of probation.
Why did I get a trespass?
Despite his microphone being turned off, Torres continues to question his trespassing charge.
I assume the microphone's off by design, Mr. Romero.
Your Honor, he's wanting to know the nature of the probable cause determination for count 2 on the trespass.
Nature? I found probable cause, if that's what you mean. Excuse me? Turn the mic on. No, bring him back. Come on, bring him back.
After the insults, Torres decides to hit the judge with something else. A couple of verses.
Are you ready? So we steady like we friendly, cause you know I gotta do this, man. You're so whack, dog. Man, yo, just take off all the charges, hey, man.
As Torres continues what's becoming a nonsensical rant,
Nah, I'm going home right now. Just leave me outside or I don't know.
the public defender interjects.
Your Honor, at this time, I believe he may require mental health screening, Your Honor.
What makes you say that?
You're charged with trespassing and like homosexuality and rape and all that.
I didn't charge you with anything, sir.
That's what I'm charging you with. Oh my goodness.
Mr. Torres, I can tell you, is there any reason right now I should not hold you in direct criminal contempt for your behavior in the court?
No.
When to quote, you just said, you judge, and do you have any explanation of why you would say something like that?
I'm God.
Yeah.
The judge doesn't entertain his holier-than-thou claim and hands down an additional charge.
I find you in direct criminal contempt, and I hereby sentence you to 60 days in Broward County Jail.
How we feel that he didn't get enough time for God sake, I'm so with you.
Next, we go to Fresno, California, and the trial of Joseph Ward. In 2018, Ward was charged with sexual assault, kidnapping, carjacking, and a number of other crimes in the brutal attack of a 25-year-old nanny. Ward pled not guilty, calling it a case of mistaken identity. Even when presented with this surveillance footage from the day of the crime outside the victim's house, Ward claims he's innocent. This is Ward's third sexual assault charge, and if convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. At the trial, he used various ploys to delay the proceedings, frustrating the judge, Christy Culver-Capitan.
As I told you before, it's not time for a dialogue. So you speak through counsel.
And how do I get evidence in that I want?
You speak through counsel. You're represented by counsel.
In another move, Ward tried to fire his attorney, and when that didn't work, asked the judge if he could represent himself.
Conduct of the defendant in court gives the court reason to believe that if he was allowed to represent himself, he may cause a disruption in the proceedings as he's already done so.
Running out of stall tactics, Ward chooses to testify on his own behalf, hoping his performance will convince the jury of his innocence. But the moment he steps in the witness box, Ward's behavior becomes peculiar.
Did you have any contact with the female named who testified here in court?
Your
answer was no?
No, I did not know.
Let's see that again. Ward collapses and remains on the floor for several minutes. Court officials tend to him and he's taken to a hospital, but the cause of his collapse remains a mystery. Ward's collapse does pause the proceedings, but ultimately it doesn't stop the jury from reaching its verdict. Guilty on all charges.
We got Bob Shedd in the house.
Next, we go to a bond hearing in Jefferson County, Kentucky. The judge is Sean Delahanty, a jurist with 20 years on the bench. The defendant is Charles Lewis, who's here on a misdemeanor charge for having a fake ID. The other key figure is Bob Shadd, an attorney for the defendant.
What's Bob Shedd doing here?
Shadd and the judge go way back and are both seasoned veterans, so the arraignment should move pretty smoothly.
Game time, Shedd. We're down to Charles Lewis. Is that you, sir? We're going to work this around your lawyer. He's 24 years old. He's a high risk on both measures.
With many arraignments still to go today, the judge wants to keep things moving.
So give the police officer false identification, got a $2,500 bond.
But to do so, the one thing he needs is the case file, which is apparently in the possession of Bob Shadd.
He has... Bob, where is the case file? Well, you got to stop doing that, Bob. Give the case file to Miss... I will. Right now. Right now. Right.
Despite their history, the judge has lost all patience with Shadd.
Come around here and get Bob Shadd. Come around here and get him. Take him into custody.
You heard right.
Take him into custody.
The judge just told a court officer to take Shadd, the defense attorney, into custody. Even his own clerk seems amused by this unusual demand.
Come here. Please take him into custody right now.
Your Honor, I have done nothing wrong. No. The judge, that
you all come here.
Not acceptable, Judge.
That's fine. Keep it up, Bob. I need you to pick up Bob Shadd, take him on that side of the wall.
Again, that's Shadd right there.
He needs to be taken into custody. I don't know if you take him that way. I don't know where you take him.
Looks like a deputy is actually preparing to take Shadd away.
Did you give up the file yet, Bob?
Yes, I've given her the file, Your Honor.
You need to leave, Bob.
Your Honor, I'm representing my client.
Take him out of here.
Your Honor.
Now that he's got the file, Judge Delahanty is ready to move on once Shadd is removed. But the counselor refuses to leave.
I've done nothing wrong, Judge.
Fine. Head that way, Bob.
I respectfully request you to give me an opportunity to represent my client.
Not this moment.
I have done nothing wrong, Your Honor, and
You're disrupting the court.
I will file a complaint with the Judicial Retirement Commission.
Fine. Do that, Bob.
Do it.
I'm not. Fine, Bob. All right, now we're moving on. Here we have... that's what I said, Bob. It's unacceptable. Anyway...
Shadd's escorted out of the hearing, but not into custody, and no charges were ever filed against him. And not only did Bob Shadd not file a complaint against Judge Delahanty, but when asked about the incident, Shadd said Delahanty is an excellent judge, and he will even vote for him in the next election. As for the defendant, Charles Lewis, who just watched this all go down, the judge releases him on his own recognizance.
I'm sorry it happened, but the car that I was driving was like a race car.
Now to Jefferson County Circuit Court in Louisville, Kentucky. 27-year-old Damon Hobbs is being sentenced for second-degree manslaughter. At the microphone, a woman is sharing her impact statement with the court.
Children who've lost their father over something senseless, and sisters who have lost their brother, and a Their best friend.
One of the victim's sisters, Tina Strange, is seated in the gallery. Sensing that she's upset, someone nearby offers her a tissue, but that won't be enough to calm her down.
And we're here today and we want the court to know how we feel that he didn't get enough time. God, that's great. You're up. Okay, sit. Press button. I got it.
Lay down.
So what caused the victim's sister to lash out? She claims the woman sitting next to her was snickering throughout the proceedings. After throwing the violent sucker punch, Tina Strange is charged with contempt of court, sentenced to a day in jail. Next, we go to Rock Hill, South Carolina, for the sentencing of Abdul Omar Emanuel. 20-year-old pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, armed robbery, and other charges in the death of 25-year-old Michael Giddens. Emanuel and two friends went to the Giddens home to buy drugs. When he saw the victim was armed, Emanuel shot Giddens in the chest. He fled the scene but was arrested the following week. Before Judge Edward Miller delivers his sentence, he listens to a statement from Emanuel's mother, Pamela St. Hill. But instead of talking about her son, she addresses the victim's family.
I'm not only standing here today because I'm so small. I'm also standing here because I'm the mother who also lost a child. So I want you to know that I feel your pain. On behalf of my family, we are so sorry for your loss. And I know no matter what I said today can bring me back.
Hill then addresses her son directly.
And I'll say that you can have it with it. I am sorry. I'm trying to do the best that I can as a single mom. If I'm not here, you come home. No, I'm up there looking up at you. Please make me smile. Don't make me cry, please. I've been crying for several years now, son. I'm trying to raise him the best way I know how. He never had a male figure in his life. I'm asking you to please have mercy on him.
Thank you very much.
Emanuel's then given a chance to address the court and the family of Michael Giddens.
Your Honor, I know that I've done wrong, and I didn't mean for any of this to happen. So please, Your Honor, I'm begging you to please forgive me and have mercy on me. To the Giddens family and to my family, I'm truly and deeply sorry for the loss of your son.
Emanuel also addresses his mother's powerful statement from earlier.
Mom, please don't blame yourself for the mistake that I made. I know you gave me everything I want and you wanted the best for me. I wish at all times you was talking to me, I would have listened to you, and I know I would not be standing here today.
But the pleas for mercy don't have much of an impact on the judge's decision.
Good. Quite a record. So I'm going to give you 30 years on the manslaughter, 5 on the accompanying possession of a weapon during a violent crime, 10 years on the armed robbery consecutive.
In total, the judge sentenced Emanuel to 40 years in state prison. He won't be eligible for parole until he's 56 years old.
Good morning. Are you Virginia Wagner?
Hi, Miss Wagner.
Next, we head to Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. The defendant, 85-year-old Virginia Wagner. The charge, reckless driving and driving with a suspended license. The vehicle, a souped-up Dodge Dart.
You had that race car. You had that fast car. I know you did. You didn't need that fast car.
Wagner doesn't refute the charge, but places most of the blame on the car itself.
I'm sorry it happened, but the car that I was driving was like a race car. It had an extra motor in it. The car is not going to be driving anymore.
Okay. I would recommend a $100 fine.
All right. You understand the offer from the Commonwealth is that you would plead guilty to operating on a suspended license and you would have to pay a $100 fine?
I know it now.
Okay, did you understand though that, do you want to accept that and plead guilty today?
Yes, I'm guilty, yeah.
As a packed gallery looks on, Wagner finishes up her business. That is, until
Yes, sir.
An unusual request is submitted to the judge.
Ma'am, he wants to pay your fine.
A good Samaritan who gave his name as Mike Evans offered to pay Wagner's fine.
So, Miss Wagner, you go down...
Sit here and I'll just take the paper.
Yeah, you give him your paper, and he's going to go down there and pay that for you. Thank you, sir.
Wagner appreciated the man's generosity, but after initially accepting his money, she later returned the cash, paid the fine herself, bringing an end to Virginia Wagner's time behind the wheel.
You were a potential menace to society.
I was doing good, Your Honor. I really was.
Next, we go to Lorain, Ohio, where Zaire Duffy is in court for violating his parole. Duffy racked up 8 charges while on parole, including drug trafficking, gun possession, and leading police on a high-speed car chase. The judge, Raymond Ewers, has given the defendant several opportunities in the past to stay out of jail. But today could be the day his luck runs out.
The state would ask that you sentence this defendant to the maximum amount of time allowed by law. He's been involved in a number of offenses involving guns, drug trafficking, high-speed chases with the police. He has no regard for society.
After the prosecutor's statement, Duffy has one last chance to explain his actions.
I was doing good, Your Honor. I really was.
You better, I was doing good out there. I was not selling drugs. I was doing none of that. I was trying to do my life on track, man. And this man just told me you're trying to give me 13 years. I'm not a monster. I'm not a monster. Who was driving that car the other day when we were chasing you? I was driving. Well, I think I had plenty of time to observe how you would behave after you left prison. I hung significant prison time over your head because the 8 cases you had in this courtroom showed to me that you were a potential menace to society. I gave you an opportunity. I gave you more than one opportunity. I gave you more opportunities than maybe I should have, because look at where we are today. You put people's lives at risk, and I'm not going to allow that to happen anymore under my watch. The court finds that the defendant is in violation of his community control as well as his judicial release, and the court is like...
The judge begins to read his rather lengthy sentence.
Fourth case, 14 CR 089912. Again, the defendant is found.
Duffy turns his back on the judge and mumbles a few words to his attorney.
He has 12 months on the 5th case, which was...
Those tears have now faded, and he looks straight at the courtroom camera.
89550. I'll tell you, I'm not happy about today.
I'm just asking what's the total sentence, sir?
The total sentence would be 13 years and 4 months.
So you just getting 13 years?
13 years and 4 months.
That's 3s, 4s, and 5s, bro.
That's
how is this a justice system?
It's justice because I gave you more opportunities. I'm talking right now. Oh, you don't, do you? Okay. There you go. So long, pal. I gave you more chances than anyone would ever give someone with 8 cases, and this is how you behave. You deserve every one that you get.
Duffy's removed from the courtroom to begin his 13-year sentence. Among other things, possession of drugs, drug trafficking, and possession of criminal tools.
All right, next case.
That's all for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Cam.
We, the jury, find the defendant.
Don't touch me like that.
Come back up here right now.
We start things off at the Russell and Wayne County Family Court in Kentucky for a hearing on a domestic violence order filed by a husband against his ex-wife.
You and the respondent were married in the past and have children in common, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And were the statements you made in your petition true and correct at that time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you willing to make those statements part of your sworn testimony here today?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you asking the court to enter an order restraining the respondent from any contact with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
I've taken your statements in your petition as part of your testimony, but I need you to tell me briefly, in your own words, what happened. caused you to ask for a domestic violence order?
Yes, Your Honor. Things have been escalating, I guess, since the first of the year. And Melissa's had a couple of MIWs and a couple arrests. And she got out of jail in, I guess, April. And she started, we hadn't really had anything personal up until that point. She got out of jail in April. And she started.
My personal life is your business, John. It has nothing to do with
Miss Hardwick,
no.
You will be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court. I haven't done anything to him.
She will be arrested for contempt of court.
It doesn't make any difference.
You will serve 10 days for contempt of court. You go now.
Wait and see. Get my boyfriend off the floor. Get it.
After spending nearly 5 months in jail, Melissa Hardwick pleads guilty to intimidating a participant in a legal process. She avoids any further jail time by agreeing to a court-ordered diversion or rehabilitation program for 5 years.
The emergency protective order will remain in place of no contact.
Next, we head to the 3rd Judicial District Court in Las Cruces, New Mexico, for the detention hearing of Sigmund Gomez. Gomez is charged with multiple felonies related to the sexual abuse of a minor. Gomez and his girlfriend had allegedly raped a 15-year-old family member repeatedly over the course of 2 years. Today, he's in court for a detention hearing and has just learned the judge has denied him bond, meaning he'll remain in custody until his trial.
What are you gonna do?
It takes 7 deputies to subdue Gomez. Gomez now faces additional charges of resisting and obstructing following the courtroom outburst. Next, we head to the S. James Foxman Justice Center in Daytona Beach, Florida.
You're ready to go for our hearing, Judge.
All right, Ms. Cook, come on up. The woman being sworn in is 18-year-old Keandria Cook. Cook's in court today to receive a sentence for using a dating app to set up a robbery that ended with another teen being shot. The teen survived. Cook has accepted a plea deal that will drop a conspiracy charge, which carried a maximum penalty of life in prison. But counts of carjacking, attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and felony battery are still in play.
All right, come on up, Ms. Cook. You get to say the final words.
I just want to say that I'm sorry for being wrong, that her son had to get shot, because I didn't even know he was going to get shot. My boyfriend and his friends did threaten me to do this. I didn't even know what was going on until I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. I just want to say I asked for forgiveness as much as I get a chance so I can get out and finish school. And I get my mama proud because I want to be her first child to bring home a high school diploma. And I just want to make my mama proud. That's it.
Cook now prepares to hear her sentence as her loved ones look on.
Ms. Cook, you're before the court for sentencing. A couple of things going in your favor. One, you didn't hold the firearm during this episode. The second is that the victim luckily survived. That being said, this was intentional. There was an orchestrated ambush, and you are a main part of that. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and adjudicate you guilty of all 3 charges, sentence you to 20 years in state prison. Concurrent as to the first.
The crying you hear is coming from Cook's mother. The sentence much more severe than they expected.
Charges. All fines and costs.
It turns out that Cook and her mother's reactions were so intense because they believed the plea deal meant prison time. Judge Foxman allows her to enter a new plea deal, citing miscommunication between Cook and the assistant public defender. As a result of that new deal,
I think he got good in it, and I think he got potential on the other side of that.
Cook's sentence is reduced to 11 years in prison.
Stop pissing me off.
No, you know what? I'm a public defender. I have a right to be here.
If you want to fight, let's go out back and I'll just beat your ass.
Now to the Moore Justice Center in Brevard County, Florida.
2 charges, assault and resisting. You have the
where public defender Andrew Weinstock and his client are appearing before Judge John Murphy, whose voice you hear.
Public defender, what do you want to do?
Have they filed?
They have.
I'm not waiting.
All right, what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? I'm not waiting. You want to set up for trial? Set up for trial.
Judge Murphy wants the defendant to waive his right to a speedy trial because the court's schedule's backed up. Weinstock isn't budging, and tensions are mounting.
If I had a rock, I would throw it at you right now. Stop pissing me off. Just sit down. I'll take care of it. I don't need your help.
No, you know what? I'm the public defender. I have a right to be here, and I have a right to stand and represent my clients.
If you want to fight, let's go out back, and I'll just beat your ass.
They both head to the hallway behind the courtroom, just out of the view of the court's cameras. Believe it or not, they get into a physical altercation until Judge Murphy returns to the courtroom alone.
Thank you.
I will catch my breath eventually. Man, I'm an old man.
Once Judge Murphy catches his breath, he continues with the rest of the hearings without Weinstock present.
Your choices, considering there's probably going to be a changeover in personnel, are setting it for trial June 9th, or if you were wanting to waive speedy, we would set it for July 15th.
I would like to get it done as fast as possible.
That doesn't help me.
The incident's investigated by the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission, who charged Judge John Murphy with threatening to commit violence against an assistant public defender, engaging in a physical altercation with counsel, and resuming his docket while defendants were without counsel. The case eventually reaches the Florida Supreme Court, which orders the immediate suspension and permanent removal of Judge Murphy from his post. Andrew Weinstock later resigns from the public defender's office. We're in the Cherokee County Magistrate Court in Gaffney, South Carolina. This is 25-year-old Joshua Mosley. He's being formally charged with the murder of Drenika Hopper. Hopper was found unresponsive in a Gaffney home with a gunshot wound to the head. The two were acquaintances, and Mosley is believed to have been in the home with Hopper before the shooting occurred.
Man, everybody lived to be in the victim's family is here. Both our members. I'd like you to stand up this time, Your Honor. Yes, sir. Members, stand up.
Family members and loved ones of Drenika filled the courtroom for Mosley's hearing. In an unusual proceeding, the judge is allowing them to address the defendant directly.
I'll let you know, Josh, you took my baby away from me. And you was wrong for that. You done destroyed my family. I hope you don't ever get out. I really didn't think about what I was going to say. I just wanted you to know that even though in your mind she may have not meant much to you, she meant so much to us. It's not even words to explain, like, what you took from our family.
I just want to know why. Why? Who gave you the power? Who put it in your hand that you could just take another person's life? You hurt my family, and you just took my sister. Like it don't mean nothing to nobody. Like that's yours. Like you ain't have no choice. Like you in control of life and death. You ain't got no control of karma. Consequences. There are consequences.
And now Mosley requests the opportunity to respond.
Are you on your way to right for things? Yes, sir. Are you under the influence of drugs or alcohol or anything? All right, sir. If you would please stand and you
She was playing with the gun. I don't know what she put away, and she made a mistake. She accidentally shot herself in the head. I promise you that's what I want you to quit saying that.
We're back in Gaffney, South Carolina, where murder suspect Joshua Mosley has asked to address the family of the victim, Drenika Hopper.
All right, sir. If you would please stand and be
I'm not crying like this for anybody. My mom has cancer. I'm locked up for 2 years right now. I can't do anything for my mom. And if Nika was here, she would tell everyone of you that I did nothing wrong. I did not harm Nika. I made mistakes. Me and Nika, we both made mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, we were on the drugs. I did not harm Nika. I want that very clear. I did not harm. My lawyer told me, do not come in here and make a statement when the time comes, because it can't be used against me. I'm going to kill you. I don't care about the prison time. I want everybody to know the truth. I did not harm Nika. We weren't arguing. We had no reason to be mad at each other. We had no reason to want to harm each other. She was playing with the gun. I don't know why she put it away, and she made a mistake. She accidentally shot herself in the head. I promise you that's what I'm going to quit saying that. I'm telling you. She looked like she was. She looked like she was not doing it. She did not do Everybody just let him finish. I'm sorry.
Joshua Mosley remains in custody today awaiting trial. He maintains his innocence. Now we head to a sentencing hearing at the Lincoln County Courthouse in Newport, Oregon. Scott Patrick Lemon, seen here wearing a blue shirt, is awaiting sentencing for charges of robbery, burglary, theft, 2 counts of menacing, and 4 counts of coercion, all stemming from a home invasion. In the courtroom is a deputy, Lemon's lawyer, a police officer, and another attorney. Deputies requested an electronic restraint for Lemon during the proceedings so that he could be immediately restrained in case he acted out. The judge denied that request. Lemon lunges for the officer. If we take a closer look, it appears that Lemon attempts to grab the officer's weapon. Fortunately for everyone, he's quickly taken down. Lemon has attempted escape added to his list of charges. He's currently serving a minimum of 7 years in prison. Now we go to the Clark County District Court in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
One hearing wrapping up, another about to begin.
So, Mr. Troiano's here on behalf of Mr. Woods. Mr. Woods is here in custody.
A jury found Terhane Woods guilty of child abuse by injury.
I'm going to go ahead and go forward with sentencing today. What's the state's position?
We want to warn you, the description of his crimes are disturbing.
This individual is extremely violent, and he's a ticking time bomb and a threat to anyone who is around him. And sadly, when the date of our offense, it just happened to be a small child. And that child almost lost his life. And this child had a perforated hole in his lungs that required medical intervention in order to save his life.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
That's the defendant, Woods, interrupting. He's just off screen to the right.
What?
When the mother was here, she'll tell you.
All right, Mr. Woods. You got to let her make her argument, okay?
The state is asking for 8 to 20 years.
Not your turn yet. Hold on.
And I will submit it with that.
You mean to tell me?
We're back with the sentencing of Terhane Woods, who's been convicted on charges of causing serious bodily injury to a 13-month-old child.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
What?
When the mother was here, she'll tell you.
Woods has been interrupting the proceedings while the judge has been attempting to keep things moving forward.
The child had no bruises on him, no marks, no wound to his liver, no nothing. When they took the child to the hospital, they started to stick tubes down the baby for a breathing problem that he never had. It caused that injury.
All right, Mr. Woods. You got to let her make her argument, okay? Mr. Troiano's going to make an argument for you in a minute.
Your Honor, I think a 3 to 10 is wholly inappropriate, and the state is asking for 8 to 20 years.
Not your turn yet. Hold on.
And I will submit it with that.
All right, Mr. Woods. Mr. Troiano's here representing you. Let's just see what he wants to say.
The 13-month-old child was body slammed and almost died. The jury found Mr. Woods guilty of that. heinous offense, but at the same time, I think we all understand that Mr. Woods just, quite frankly, isn't on this planet. He's been suffering from psychosis and mental health issues since the age of 5.
Notice the additional corrections officers beyond what we normally see in the courtroom. Woods acted out during his trial, so extra security was requested.
This was a violent case. There is a violent history. I do think you're a danger to the community, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you to 96 to 240 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections on count 1. On count 2, I'm going to send you to 12 to 36 months to run consecutive to count 1.
So how many years is that?
8 to 20 plus a 1 to 3.
8 to 20 plus 1 to 3?
Correct.
You mean to tell me?
It seems like Woods just lunged at the prosecutor. 6 officers now trying to subdue the defendant. That's the defendant's mother, obviously distraught. The officers now clear the courtroom. Woods is eventually restrained, put in a spit hood, and wheeled into custody. No additional charges are added to his already lengthy sentence. Joining me now is a man who witnessed that scene firsthand, his defense attorney, Michael Troiano. Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Do you think this was premeditated?
Truly, in my opinion, based upon dealing with him, I think he just snapped. I don't believe it was premeditated whatsoever.
It's been reported that he was trying to attack the prosecutors, but you don't buy that.
I don't necessarily buy that. He initially has the snap freak out where you hear him say, "You mean to tell me?" And then within split seconds later, you hear a pound.
You mean to tell me?
That first pound was him swinging his bound hands and hitting, I believe, one of the prosecutors' bags that was on their table.
And what's going through your head as this is happening?
To be honest, it was an adrenaline rush, and I don't mean that in a positive way. It was obviously a very scary and frightful situation for everybody involved. It's just everything else is blocked out, and you've got that tunnel vision on what's in front of you.
And never for a moment were you concerned that he was going to come after you?
I don't believe he was trying to intentionally attack myself. I personally don't believe he was intentionally trying to attack the prosecutors, because if that was his sole intent, I think being so near them and seeing how far away he got, he could have gone right after one of the 2 prosecutors that were there.
Did you talk to him after this happened?
I'll put it this way. We're pending appeal right now, and we're currently waiting for the state to file their reply. We'll see where it goes from there.
Michael Troiano, thanks very much for coming in the studio. We appreciate it. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. Thanks for watching.